The next speaker, he said, ending his rambling, is one of the three co-founders of the Gender Leadership Group, and you may be interested to know a bit about this guy who's the millennial guy in the group. Dale began his career in communication at Southwest Airlines and Ticketmaster Live Nation, so he's got style. He was acknowledged in 2012 as a leader of men of quality by feminist attorney Gloria Allred, and he has recently presented at the International Conference in Massachusetts in Masculinities, very similar when you can't see very well, the Women in Tech International Summit, and the SHRM, pronounced SHRM, Diversity and Inclusion Conference. Please welcome, here is Dale Thomas Vaughn.
Right. Hello, everyone. I'm the millennial. Do I have any other millennials in the room? All right. Do I have any Gen Z in the room? Hey, we got some. Okay, cool. I like to talk to that group of people sometimes because there's a huge amount of hope I have for our generation. I'm going to show you some stats about that in a minute. We're going to talk about systemic solutions for corporate culture change, and I'm going to do this quickly, and we're going to get into a panel that I think you guys are going to get a lot of takeaways from. So let's start here. A little bit about me. I started doing this work when I was 15, 16 years old. I actually started in a space of ending sexual violence. So sexism, sexual assault, domestic violence, sexual abuse. And I became an activist around that. I went to domestic violence shelter, I interned, I manned a hotline, I learned how to become a counselor to survivors of assault and abuse. And during that time, I started asking this question, why is this allowed? Why does this exist? How could a world where I see a lot of men in charge allow other men to be violent? How is that allowed? And that led me down at a very young age, one of those dark roads of understanding how broken masculinity as a culture actually is. So that led me into a whole world of healthy masculinity, understanding gender, understanding how to get into that. And then I had this reality, once I was working at Southwest Airlines and then Ticketmaster, that the place where I was encountering it at school, high school or college, changed once I graduated and went into the corporate world. The place that most of us now are encountering the friction of gender or any other issue is in the workplace. So if we're going to have a conversation, it has to be about how we do systemic change in the corporate culture. So that's kind of where I come from. I've spoken in a few places. You can get deeper into my work at, I have a TEDx talk called How Great Men Think Alike, deeper into my story if you want to go there. And I want to also point out the Good Men Project. If you're not familiar with that, that's a great resource. We reach about 4 million people a month about the conversation around what it means to be a man in all different contexts around social justice. If you don't know the traffic levels, that's roughly Oprah.com level, just about what it means to be a good man. So this is the problems the stuff we're gonna cover today, the problem, the opportunity, the solutions, and what everybody in this room is kind of here for. What's my role? What's my responsibility in this as a leader, as a person, et cetera? So the first thing is the problem, right? Maybe some of you have seen this. This is from Lean-In and McKinsey. This is the actual representation of the pipeline, right? If you haven't seen this, you might notice that at the end here where we've got entry level, it's not quite equal, but it's closer. And you see towards the end, we've got a very small percentage of women in leadership roles. Now, obviously, all of you know that, but what I've been hearing a lot when I go to speak at women's conferences is I have women saying, I have felt the glass ceiling hit me. I have felt it come up against my life. So I think women encounter this in a really, a much more tangible way. And often I think men, I hear this a lot in companies I go to consult in, we have a woman president, or we have a woman vice president, or we have, right, the tokenism of I can recognize that there's a leader in my company that's not like me. And so that means we've solved this issue. This, I think, is compelling because it shows us there's a real problem and that it's something we can quantify. When I started doing this work, these statistics weren't really available. So now we have them, let's use them. So so the Manpower Group is a HR group, so that's not just about what it means to be a man and powerful. They said the holdup is that the biggest problem is an entrenched male culture. And I think what's fascinating is they found that this is a barrier men acknowledged must change as well, which to me says that men also feel uncomfortable with masculinity and the male culture at work. I just want to, just for my own edification, I'd like to know how many, raise your hand, guys in this room have felt uncomfortable in the male culture in your workplace? Like the majority, thank you. I know I have as well. I grew up an athlete. I grew up fighting for my space, but I got into the corporate culture and thought, why is that still here? That should be for the field or whatever. Like, why are we doing that in the workplace? Never felt comfortable in that. This is the spring 2016 Harvard Public Opinion poll that gives me hope. It says that more than half of millennial men think that they enjoy more advantages than women in American society, but less than 20% of them identify as feminists. To me, this is the opportunity of our lifetimes, that a majority or a near majority of men of a generation get that there is a problem, but only 20% of my generation identify as being part of the solution. That's a huge problem. It's also a huge opportunity. It's what I want to get into a little bit more today. And when we have a chance to talk to our panelists about their corporate solutions, we're going to get into a little bit about the millennial generation and Gen Z upcoming. So the opportunity. How many of you, you're all in business, if I told you you could have 300% more revenue this year, how many of you would do whatever I told you to do? Right? I'd run through walls for 300%. So this is something from UC Davis. Firms with the greatest gender diversity among executives and board members earned 300% more revenue and 50% higher profit than the average company in a study of 400 public companies. I give you this statistic as one of the thousands of statistics you could find because where we start when we go into companies, and some of the companies are in this room, if we start with the business case, if you are trying to convince men to be involved in this conversation, starting with irrefutable facts means they can't use that as their logic out. So give them a fact like this, 300%, what wouldn't you do for that? And they'll go, okay, I would probably do almost anything for 300% more revenue. Any leader in any company would say that. So they'll say, I get it, all right, gender partnership is good for business, but what's in it for me? I am busy. Why do I need to be the one taking care of this? This is also high-minded apathy. There's a problem, but I'm not really required to solve it. So let's get into what men actually gain personally. Now, I'm really glad Michael Kimmel is here. He gave you a much deeper dive into this. This is some of his quotes as well. I like to say, raise your hand if you would like less worry, less time at work, more quantity and quality time with loved ones, better relationship satisfaction, and better sex. Raise your hands. You might be a feminist. And I like that I got Ray raising his hand there. So this is just like the duh, but at the same time, we have to talk to men about what is in it for them personally. I get this question a lot. I'm a sales guy, I'm out in the field, I'm working to make my quotas, I have clients to meet, I got stuff to do, I got paperwork to file. Why is this something you need me to do? Well, it's good for business. Well, it's good for me personally. Okay. Is it top priority is the question, right? And I end up going to the moral case. This is something that has always influenced me, and this is some interesting research, again, from McKinsey, that $28 trillion of additional annual GDP within 10 years, this was put out in 2015, is the possibility if we bridge the gender inequality gap. That's the highest level possibility. 12 trillion is if we just matched best in region country in progress. Now, there's a deeper dive there, but the point is 12 to $28 trillion worth of annual revenue to the world that is just going to waste because we've done a bad job of gender equality. Let me put that into perspective. What could you do with $28 trillion? You could literally end global poverty. You could get clean water for everyone in the world, college for everyone, that's a US statistic. You get US student loan forgiveness, and that's gone up a little bit. World hunger could be solved, $267 billion per year over the next 15 years. So let's say that that's $3 trillion. Send humans to Mars and bring them back, by the way. These are all estimates. I've got research. You can come and talk to me about it if I want to show you deeper pieces of that. But the point of that is we could do all of that stuff and still have $22.6 trillion left over after 1 year. That's just 1 year. So the point I want to make is we could pretty much solve every problem if we started here, right? Like, we can all agree. So this is where I start to get hopeful, because I think that my generation gets that. I think that there's an opportunity here. 97% of millennials think their generation will finally achieve equality of opportunity for emerging female leaders. That might seem pie in the sky, it might seem naive, it might seem innocent, but it is also a reality of their expectations walking into your recruitment pools, walking into your client companies, walking into your RFPs. So if you are not paying attention to what millennials as a vast majority believe is possible, your business might be missing out on opportunity. So again, this makes what we're talking about, gender equality, gender partnership, a very high priority. We would all agree at this point, right? Let's get into the solutions. Okay, I've given you the reasons. Let's say you all in this room believe me that gender equality would be good. Is that true? Got like a round of applause for like, gender equality would be good. I just felt good to hear. So let's get into the solutions. So when I go into companies, we start with the cases around impact, but then we start to talk about communication. We start to talk about how do you bring in leadership? How do you make a diversity and inclusion program that actually works? Well, the good news is there's some research around this. This is from the Harvard Business Review. If you haven't read this, this is literally called Diversity Programs That Get Results. And I'm going to show you the diversity programs that don't get results, and some of you are going to blush. So if you haven't seen this, I'm just going to quickly go through it. You'll see that the numbers in blue show that there's an increase in representative people within a company. And you'll see that orange is lower. Now, this shows you all the things that do actually work. You might notice that some of the things you do are on here. There's one of them that I want you to pay attention to, which is voluntary training. I'm going to show you a slide here in just a second that says mandatory diversity training, and I want you to see the difference in the numbers. So mandatory, bad, voluntary, good. Whenever we do trainings, we ask for voluntary commitment. That does two things. One is it lets potential allies volunteer to come forward as allies, which is what we want, right? Not quite as rescuers, but as, I want to be part of this. I want to actually be engaged in part of the team. I have seen, literally, this is amazing, y'all. I have seen people, I said y'all, I'm from Texas. That came out, sorry. I have seen men walk into trainings I do, right? 20, 30 people, and some of them are senior leaders. They're men walking in head down, feeling like they're about to get their knuckles rapped, right? And I've seen those same men, after that voluntary training, after a few hours, walk out saying, I am so glad I came to this. I feel like I'm finally part of something at my company. I feel like I'm finally part of something. That's a quote from somebody, a man, a white man, who said that to me. Just the idea that I could be a part of something as a white man is maybe something I'd never thought of before. I thought my company was what I was a part of, but now I'm a part of something within my company. That's huge. So I beseech you to get this study and get deeper into it. But what I wanted you to see is also, there are some pieces in here about mentoring. We've heard some talk about the difference between mentoring and sponsoring, which is true. One of the things about mentoring is that white men accidentally get a lot of mentoring. And so if you don't have formalized mentorship processes, what happens is the white men get all the mentoring or get all the sponsorship. So installing some kind of formalized mentorship process tends to work pretty well. So again, mandatory is a problem. We'll get into job tests and grievance systems, I'm sure. What I want to do really quickly is cover what is your role and your responsibility. This is what I was asking myself when I was in these companies at a lower level. And we have created what I think is a very compelling roadmap. This is something that you will see in sheet form on your tables in the next break. On the back of it, it also has the top 8 ways to engage men in full gender partnership in your workplace. I just want you to have a roadmap of places you can go, starting from the post-conference show and share. And if you want to have a deeper conversation about all the stuff that we do with Gender Leadership Group, we have a table downstairs. You can come and talk to us afterward.